In the modern world, the Pope stands for spirituality and righteousness, but this has only sometimes been the case. From the corridors of power to the whispers of scandal, the papal journey is riddled with gripping stories of ambition, corruption, and moral degradation. The rise of the Pope, once seen as a beacon of spiritual authority, was often a web of political influence and familial ambition. Noble families vied for influence, leveraging wealth and connections to shape the course of papal history. But behind the facade of piety lay a darker reality, tales of debauchery, simony, and nepotism that tarnished the Church's sanctity. So what secrets lie beneath the veneer of the papacy, and how have they shaped the course of religious history? Let's get started. And remember to let us know in the comments what topics you'd like us to cover next. The power and the papacy. The role of the Pope as the spiritual leader of the Roman Catholic Church has been one of profound religious, cultural, and political significance throughout history. The papacy, established in the 1st century AD with St. Peter, whom Catholics consider the first pope, has evolved into a pivotal institution that shaped the course of Western civilization. Historically, the Pope's authority was derived from the belief that he is the successor to St. Peter, entrusted with the keys to the kingdom of heaven as per the New Testament. This spiritual authority was recognized not just as a religious symbol, but also as a mandate for temporal leadership. Throughout the Middle Ages, the Pope was not merely a religious leader, but also a powerful political figure who could influence kings and emperors, arbitrate in matters of war and peace, and play a crucial role in the governance of the expansive territories controlled by the Church, known as the Papal States. The ascension to papal power was deeply entwined with political maneuvers and familial influence, particularly during times when the Church was one of the most powerful institutions in Europe. The process of becoming pope, theoretically based on merit and the guidance of the Holy Spirit during the papal conclave, was often subject to secular influences. Noble families of Rome and later other parts of Europe saw the papacy as a culmination of political ambition. For instance, during the Renaissance, the notorious Borgia and Medici families used their substantial political clout and wealth to secure the papacy for their members. The infamous popes of the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, the papacy was not only a spiritual center, but also a stage for dramatic and often scandalous political plays. Among the more notorious figures to assume the role of the Pope during this period were Benedict IX and John XII, whose reigns were marked by corruption, evil, and scandal. Benedict IX ascended to the papacy at an extraordinarily young age, believed to be in his late teens or early 20s, around the year 1032. His rise was primarily due to his family's significant influence, particularly that of his father, Count Alberic, who used his wealth and power to secure the position for his son. This marked one of the first times in church history that the papacy was openly treated as a prize to be bought, a trend that would cast a long shadow over the church for centuries. Benedict IX's tenure as pope was notorious for its moral decay. Chronicles of the time, such as those by St. Peter Damian, paint a picture of a pope who led a passionate life, hosting orgies and engaging in other lewd behaviors within the walls of the Lateran Palace. His reputation for wickedness was so severe that he was deposed and reinstated as pope 3 times over his career, a testament to the chaotic state of church politics at the time. Perhaps the most shocking act of his papacy was his decision to sell the papal office in 1045. Faced with opposition and likely seeking to marry, Benedict resolved to step down, but not without profit. He sold the papacy to his godfather, the priest John Gratian, for a substantial sum, marking the first and only time in history that the papacy was sold outright. Gratian took the name Gregory VI and later stepped down amid scandal, leading to a reform movement within the church. John XII, who reigned from 955 to 964, was another young and scandalous pope, ascending to the papal throne at around 18 years of age. His rise was also due to familial connections. Being the son of Alberic II, who ruled Rome at the time, John XII's reign was similarly marked by debaucheries that would scandalize the faithful. He was accused by contemporaries of turning the sacred Lateran Palace into a whorehouse, and his papacy was filled with accusations of adultery, incest, and simony. The end of his papacy came dramatically. John XII died under mysterious circumstances, allegedly murdered by a jealous husband who caught him in the act of committing adultery with his wife. This ignoble end was reflective of his tumultuous and morally questionable tenure as pope. Corruption and controversy. Simony, the act of buying or selling church offices or sacred things, was a particularly rampant form of corruption among the popes and the higher clergy during the Middle Ages. This practice was named after Simon Magus, who, as recounted in the Acts of the Apostles, offered the apostles money in exchange for the power to confer the Holy Spirit. An infamous example of simony was the sale of the papacy by Pope Benedict IX, who sold his papal office to his godfather, Gregory VI, for a large sum of money. Nepotism was equally destructive to the church's moral authority. The term, which originates from the Italian word nipote, meaning nephew, refers to the preferential treatment given to relatives or friends, especially by giving them jobs. This was common practice among popes who used their position to secure wealth and power for their families. For instance, Pope Alexander VI, a member of the notorious Borgia family, appointed his own sons and relatives to significant church positions to consolidate his and his family's power across the Italian territories. This practice not only undermined the meritocratic basis of church leadership, but also emboldened familial dynasties to influence church policies and doctrines for their gain. Moral failings among the popes also extended to personal lifestyles that were in stark contradiction to the church's teachings. Numerous popes were known to lead lives of debauchery and excess. Pope John XII, for example, turned the Lateran Palace into what was essentially a brothel, engaging openly in sexual relationships and hosting orgies. His lifestyle was so scandalous that it prompted accusations from the church's ranks and led to his eventual overthrow. Pope Alexander VI was similarly infamous for his personal life, which included multiple mistresses and fathering several children, whom he openly acknowledged and for whom he secured positions of power. Such behavior was not only a blatant disregard for clerical celibacy, but also damaged the spiritual and moral authority of the papacy. These corrupt practices and moral failings had profound impacts, leading to widespread disillusionment among the faithful and calls for reform. The most significant response to these corruptions was the Protestant Reformation, which directly challenged the authority of the Pope and led to lasting changes in the Christian world. These controversies underscored the tension between the ideals of spiritual leadership and the human failings of those who have occupied the office of the Pope, reflecting a complex legacy that has shaped the history of the Catholic Church. The Western Schism. The origins of the Western Schism can be traced back to the return of the papacy from Avignon to Rome. For nearly 70 years, the popes had resided in Avignon, France, a period known as the Avignon Papacy. This relocation was politically motivated and largely influenced by the French crown. In 1377, Pope Gregory XI moved the papal seat back to Rome, attempting to re-establish the traditional centrality of Rome in Christendom. However, his death in 1378 triggered a power struggle that led to the election of two rival popes. The election of Urban VI in Rome was initially accepted, but his harsh leadership style quickly alienated cardinals, who then elected Clement VII as a rival pope back in Avignon. This resulted in the simultaneous existence of two popes, each with their own set of cardinals, claiming legitimacy and excommunicating each other's followers. The schism was exacerbated by nationalistic loyalties, with different European kingdoms aligning with either the Roman Pope or the Avignon Pope based on political convenience and national affinity. The Western Schism had far-reaching consequences on multiple fronts. Religiously, the schism undermined the papal authority. The fundamental notion of a single unifying pope was a cornerstone of the Church's doctrine, and the existence of multiple popes confused and divided the faithful. The question of legitimate spiritual authority led to widespread disillusionment and skepticism towards the Church's governance. In terms of church politics, the schism intensified political maneuvering within the church, as each claimant to the papacy sought to consolidate power and discredit his rivals. This period saw an increase in the politicization of ecclesiastical appointments and greater interference by secular rulers in ecclesiastical affairs. Kings and princes often chose to support one pope or the other, based not on theological reasons but on political expediency, further entangling the church with secular politics. For the everyday believer, the impact was equally profound. The schism created a crisis of faith for many, as the fundamental unity of Christendom was visibly broken. The validity of sacraments administered by priests loyal to one pope or the other was called into question, affecting marriages, baptisms, and last rites. This uncertainty eroded the spiritual confidence of the laity and contributed to a growing appetite for reform, which would later culminate in the Protestant Reformation. Ultimately, the Western Schism was resolved by the Council of Constance of 1414 to 1418, which deposed both existing popes and elected Martin V, thereby restoring papal unity. However, the scars left by the schism were deep, setting the stage for future challenges to papal authority and altering the religious landscape of Europe permanently. Reform attempts and failures. The Council of Pisa in 1409 was convened to resolve the Western Schism, which had seen multiple claimants to the papacy simultaneously. The council aimed to depose the competing popes in Rome and Avignon and restore unity within the church. However, rather than resolving the schism, the council inadvertently exacerbated the division by electing a third pope, Alexander V. This decision only deepened the crisis, as it added another layer to the existing confusion and further diluted the authority of the papacy. Despite efforts at reform, scandals and corruption within the church persisted. The newly elected popes from the Council of Pisa and subsequent councils often found themselves embroiled in the same practices that had discredited their predecessors. Nepotism, simony, and moral failings continued to plague the church's hierarchy. These ongoing issues demonstrated the deep-rooted challenges in reforming an institution that was entangled with political power and personal ambitions. The failure of the Council of Pisa and the continued scandals underscored the necessity for more substantial reforms, setting the stage for the later Council of Constance. This council finally resolved the schism by deposing all claimant popes and electing Martin V, beginning a slow process of healing and reform within the Catholic Church. So, how did these revelations reshape your understanding of the papacy and its influence on history? Please let us know in the comments section below. And remember to like and share. Also, hit the subscribe button to get notifications on the latest uploads on the channel. As always, see you in the following video.